All right, so last video we talked about some introduction to systems of equations. Now we're going to talk about substitution. This is the way to solve it without graphing, because we said graphing was lame, so no graphing. So we're going to look at two examples here. We'll look at the first one first. Okay, is where we have two equations. We could graph it if we wanted, but we're going to try and do it without graphing, so it's a little, so we can do it algebraically. What we're going to do is we have to understand that when we have our two lines, at that one special point, x and y are the exact same thing. So the idea is that if in this equation y was like 4, it's 4 as well in that other equation, which means that this y value is equal to that y value. And if they're the same, we can substitute or replace them with each other. So the idea is I'm saying y is equal to 4x minus 9. That's the same thing as saying like y is equal to 3. It's just what it is equal to. That whole thing, x minus 9, is the same as y. So what I'm going to do is if I knew that y was equal to 3, I would put that number, would substitute it in there. But instead, I'm going to take this whole thing and substitute it into the y value in the second equation. So basically what you do is you take that first part, 4x minus 9, let's write it like this. We'll take the second equation, y equals x minus 3, and we're going to replace the y with the 4x minus 9. So now we get that. This is good because now we have only x. So what we're going to do is we're just going to rearrange and solve. So I'll subtract x from both sides. So we get 3x minus 9 equals negative 3. Add 9 to both sides. So we get 3x equals 6. Divide both by 3. And I ended up getting x is equal to 2. Okay? Again, are we done? No, because the solution should be an xy value, like a point. So what I'm going to do is now that I know x is 2, I'm going to sub that again. I'm going to sub it back into one of the original equations. It doesn't matter which one, it'll be the same. So let's sub it in the second one actually, because it looks easier. So we'll do y equals x minus 3. We're going to sub. Okay. Instead of x, I'm going to put that 2 in. Y equals 2 minus 3. You should usually, when you write it, when you substitute, write it in brackets to make sure you do all the multiplication and stuff you have to. So 2 minus 3 is negative 1. That's it. So now I can write my solution is 2, negative 1. Okay, cool. Let's try it again with a harder example, this one. The reason this one's tougher is because in the last question, we had it set up in a way where it literally was y equals. We had a variable isolated. In these two, there are no like y equals or x equals. They're all jumbled up together. So all we have to do is rearrange. Sorry, my pen bugged out. Rearrange, okay? So I think that first equation is going to be easier to rearrange, and I'm going to make it x equals. You could make it y equals, and that's usually the safer bet, but it doesn't really make a difference. So right now it's x plus 7y equals 0. You know what? Let's move this over. There we go. Okay, so we got x plus 7y equals 0. I'm going to move that 7y to the other side, so x equals negative 7y. Cool. I now have x by itself. So again, I'm going to substitute this into the second equation. We don't really have to rearrange it. It'll work this way. 2x minus 8y equals 22. So I'm going to take that and sub it in for x. Remember, before I said you had to put brackets to make it so you don't screw anything up. That's important here. Okay, so I replaced the x that was right there. Need my highlighter. I replaced that x with these numbers. Okay, now I'm just going to solve, multiplying it out. So negative 14y minus 8y equals 22. I'm pretty sure that negative 22y equals 22. So y equals negative 1. So again, I now have my final answer. So the solution would be xy. So I'm going to put in the numbers I know. Oh snap, my bad. I don't know what x is yet. So we gotta sub this back into the original equation to find x. Let's do that first one. X plus 7y equals 0. X plus 7y equals 0. So x plus 7 times negative 1 equals 0. So x minus 7 equals 0. X equals 7. So now I have my my x and y value right there and right there. I'm going to sub it into the answer. So x is equal to 7 and y is negative 1. And again, if we're thinking about that on our graph, the idea is that we graph these two lines, where they cross would be like there. So we have two lines crossing at that spot, and that's the answer. So as you can see, substitution's nice because you don't need to graph at all. It doesn't take any time, especially when you have equations that aren't set up easy for graphing. You can just like go and put them in. We know we have to rearrange sometimes if the equation isn't set up perfectly, and that means we just need to get a letter by itself. So if you have an equation where it's already a letter by itself, usually y equals, substitution's the way to go. It's usually the easiest. And that's it.